Yeah.
Susan came in, and she was looking for, she said, images of women, and she said, particularly older women. And I thought, oh, sure, yeah, we've got that. We're an archive. We have, lots of photos. Of course, we try to be more inclusive and, look for those images of women. So I thought, this is, these concepts will come together in something, photos and women. But it proved to be a little more challenging. It was difficult to find photos of older women in our collection, and that was bothersome. I thought, why is that? There were photos of girls, there were photos of young women, but after a certain age, we don't see so many images of women, and I thought that was something that we needed to address, and to at least put out a conversation, start a conversation about. So here we are. Susan mentioned that she had, works, and I thought it would be great if you could, come here and talk about your work, and also, this idea of women and aging. So thanks for taking the bait.
Thanks for the invitation. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sure.
Okay. If not, just raise your hand. I can project if I need to. First of all, thank you for hosting this. I really appreciate you having me here, and this has been a fun thing to get ready for and to do. So thank you. I started out many decades ago as a weaver, and have, in my mind, kind of progressed my way to being an artist. Not that I see it more as a continuum, but before I considered myself a weaver, now I consider myself an artist who happens to use fiber and weaving as a medium. So I'll kind of go through some of that history and give you a sense of how I got here up front. And I'll also try to answer some questions that you probably will going to ask me anyway, so I can just get them out of the way. And then what I'll do is ask you to come up and look at the pieces for a few minutes, and I have some kind of guided questions. And then we'll sit back down and we'll look at the current work and talk about that in terms of the meaning around two aspects. One, aging, and then also women, because although men also have challenges in aging, I think that women have some, maybe even more challenges when it comes to that process, and would love to open that up for conversation. So with that, let's see if that works. People ask me, how did I, and I have a slightly strange story. One Saturday, I woke up and the first thought that comes to my head is, I want to weave. And I just literally said, I'm going to do this. So I got up, and I happened to know of the Weavers Guild that is on, no, it's no longer on university. It was on university then. And I knew that there would be people there I could talk to. So I walked in, and it was back in the day before everything was on computer, and I said, I want to buy a loom, what should I buy? And the woman looked at me and she goes, okay, tell me a few things about what you're going to do on it. And she pulled out this big binder that was about that thick, and we leafed through it and ended up picking something. And I found a used one out in a barn in Chaska, I believe. And it had some weathering on it, but I bought it and got it home and put it in my house and took it apart and refurbished it. And by the way, I did this when my husband was out of town. So he came home to this surprise in the back of our house. And he was great about it, but it was a surprise. And the loom that I started on was a floor loom. which is this one over here. And I put this up because this is the loom that most people think about when they think about weaving. And what this kind of loom does is it makes fabric. And you basically take this shuttle and you throw it from one side to the other, and you weave basically cloth with it. And that's where I started, and that's what I did for many years. And then I decided I really liked images better. I didn't just want to do cloth, I wanted to do pictures. And so I moved into tapestry weaving. My mother gave me a tapestry weaving class when I was, for my 50th birthday. And I took that class, and it was kind of like, this is what I'm going to do. And I put these up because there's a difference between the floor loom and the tapestry loom. Here's an image that I'm weaving right now. And so I created the image. And then this is the cartoon, or the thing that I put behind the loom to weave to. And it's almost like weaving, it's almost like painting by numbers by the time it gets there. This is the loom that I work on now. And you can see instead of being horizontal, it's vertical. And so I basically weave up. And the difference between where I started and what I do now is, I'll show you, I fill in colors rather than go from side to side. And by the way, I love questions, so please. So that was a, well, it's just like filling in colors. This one happens to be a color cartoon, so I kind of wove to the colors. And this one has a lot of bobbins because there's a lot of little dots in here. Any questions? How long did that one take? That probably took around 250 hours. It's kind of from start, you start with a clean sheet of paper, and I spend 40 plus or minus hours doing the design and getting it ready to weave. And then another, probably takes me 15 hours just to warp the loom, and then hundreds of hours to weave it, and then to finish it. Yeah.
So you are copying a photo or a picture and drawing that first and then doing this?
That's a great question. On this one, I did start with a photo, and I've been using Photoshop a lot lately. Okay. Before, I would always just sketch and erase and sketch and erase, and I'll show you some of my earlier work where I just literally drew it out. This one, I loved the photo, and then I just started massaging it. And so it was a black and white photo that I kind of modified heavily to get to that particular image. But I'll show you, I'll show you some other stuff where it's more freehand.
Okay.
Are any of these people you know?
No. Not yet. What I do have, well, I'll get into that. That's a great question. When I first started tapestry weaving, I really liked telling stories. And I will admit up front, I'm a pastor's kid, so I know lots of biblical stories. And this was one of the first ones I did where I was trying to tell a story or a message. And I call this one creation. And if you look closely, you have the snake in the Garden of Eden, but I wrapped the tongue of the snake around the snake's neck, with the thought being, hopefully evil finally destroys evil. It may take a while, but, or any other interpretation that you want. I had a pastor do a sermon off of this, and it was like, what she took out of it was amazing. And this is probably about 5 feet high and 4 feet wide.
Where does it reside?
Where is it?
Where does it reside? It kind of lives somewhere.
It's rolled up in my studio. If someone asks to, I have exhibited a number of places, but it doesn't reside any place permanently. Yeah. This is another one. Again, I call this the burning bush. And this one came out of my own personal experience. My husband had Parkinson's. And towards the end of it, I became his caregiver. And it was not a job I asked for. It was not a job I wanted. And so the biblical story that I resonated to at this point in time was Moses talking to God in the burning bush. And God going, Moses, you need to lead your people out of Israel. And Moses goes, no, I don't want to do that. Moses, you're going to lead your people out of Israel. No, God, I'm no good at it. Pick my brother. He's much better. And this conversation where Moses was trying to get out of what he was being called to do. But guess what? He got called to do it, and he did it. So that was kind of my image for that period of time in my life. And then another image that comes from that time was Jacob and the angel. And if you know the story about Jacob and the angel, Jacob was wrestling with the angel. And in the process of wrestling with the angel hurt Jacob's hip and permanently disabled him. But at the same time, when they got done, God said, Jacob, you are going to be the father of my people and my people of Israel. So the point being, life has both blessings and burdens. Or sometimes we're wounded, but at the same time we're blessed. And my own personal interpretation of that is, I clearly was, when my husband finally passed away, I was clearly exhausted, not in good shape. My parents had just died too. My kids had moved out of the house. I have a couple friends who remember what I was like back then, and it wasn't pretty. But at the same time, once I kind of went through that process and came out of it, I gained a whole new life as an artist because I no longer had my job in corporate America, and I moved on to my life as an artist, and I'm just having a wonderful time. So, there are sometimes losses are lessons, and we can talk more about that later. So I did all this stuff that I've shown you so far. It was traditional French tapestry weaving. I studied with a woman out in California, a master weaver and artist, and it's all woven from the back and sideways. So as I never see the whole piece, or I don't even see the front of it till I take it off the loom. Yeah.
So this is not the same loom that you're using for your photos, or is it?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. Because there it seemed as though you were front facing.
Some of them I front face and some of them I do back, and I can talk about why you do that. The French do it this way because they want to keep the front pristine, so I'm always beating down on the weft, the yarn. And also the French way allows you to have some nice clean lines, joins. So, and in this case, you can kind of see this line is smoother than, say, that line because of the way I do it. But that's a good segue, because then after studying for about 15 years with Nancy Jackson out in California, I studied with a Peruvian tapestry artist. And here is a picture of, so I call this another series for obvious reasons. And the Peruvian way is you weave from the bottom up instead of sideways, and you weave from the front. And before I leave this is kind of the Andean cross. My reason for studying with him is he does surface techniques where he brings it's no longer a flat fabric or plain, and I'll show you some examples of it, but also his design. I just fell in love with the way he used the colors and how he moved colors around. I call this, I see what you are doing. Obviously, I've moved to kind of more abstract images. And I did this for a show out in San Francisco that was on the environment or climate change. And I kind of say, you see the eyes in here? And I was trying to say, you know, God, the spirit, the universe, sees what we're doing to the environment. And you can see how this is different. There's some different kinds of techniques in here where it comes off the fabric. And then this one I put in because you can see, again, you have to weave it from the front, because I've got like twill in here, I've got French knots in here, I have rolls in here. There's a lot of different kinds of techniques that I was studying at that point in time. Yeah, I use a combination of wool and pearl cotton, and I bundle them together and put them on a bobbin. So these bobbins would have I do it, this is 10 ends per inch warp, and then on the bobbin, it's 2 strands of the wool that I have, plus 1 strand of pearl cotton. And the reason why I use the pearl cotton is wool is really easy to work with, and it's really sturdy, and it's really a good material to work with. The pearl cotton has more of a sheen, and the wool just absorbs light, so it has no shine to it, whereas the cotton adds just a little bit more. Adds a little, yeah.
Are they like twisted together, or are they side by side as you put them on the bobbin?
Well, it's
whatever they do.
Whatever they do.
Okay.
You know, you can twist them, you can make them very parallel, depending on what you want it to look like.
Okay.
And I work with kind of a limited number of colors, so you have to almost mix colors together to get some of the colors that I like. These are pretty monochromatic, but we can look at some of them up here where I had to take colors and put them together to come up with a third color. Then what happened was about 1.5 years ago, I got accepted into the Women's Art Institute. And it's basically a month-long intensive art class for women. and, over at St. Kate's. And during that time, the woman who was teaching it basically challenged me to talk about something that was really important and emotional to me, to kind of stretch my art in a different direction. And I don't know how many of you watched the news, but there was a significant period of time, especially around the elections, where I would watch TV and the news, and I would get so angry because I felt like nobody was telling the truth. They may be not telling the truth, and they may be telling half the truth. So I never really knew, what was really going on in the world. And so I'm going to jump ahead. So the image that I ended up walking away with after working for about a month was the eye. And that's the Tapestry version of it. And basically, I chose the eye of an older woman, thinking one of the benefits of being older is hopefully you can sort out what's truth from not truth. You can sort out what's important and what's not important. You're more discriminating. And so I thought the eye of a woman, an older woman, would be the right image for that. And so that's where I came to that. And then I thought, there's something here. There's something that I want to pursue. And so I thought, what I really wanted to do is still continue to tell stories or have a message in my work, but to focus on aging and focus on aging for women. Obviously, because I'm a woman, I can speak with a lot more knowledge of that. But I do think that there are special challenges to growing old as a woman. And I'll tell you some of the things that I have felt and some of the things that my friends have felt. But I would also like to hear your stories. So with that, what I would ask you to do is come up and pick one of the pieces up here, there's 5, the one that draws you, one that speaks to you. Doesn't have to be your favorite, it's just one that you gravitate to. And I'd like you to do 2 things. First of all, look at it for several minutes. And I'll make it at least 3 minutes, if not 5. And I want you, as you're looking at it, to think, how would I describe this to a friend of mine over the phone? If they weren't here, what would you tell them about the piece so that they could see what you're seeing? And all I'm trying to do is get you to look at it in detail. It's called close looking. And then after that, I would like you to spend another couple minutes answering the question, what draws you to it? What emotion are you feeling when you look at it? Are there any memories that you're connecting to, or any thoughts that you're connecting to when you're looking at it? And then we'll come back and I'll show you the rest of the pieces and how I came to them, but I also hope that it's more of a conversation about what you saw, because ultimately that's what's important, is what you saw. So, and help yourself to more coffee and scones. Well, it looks like most people are done, so so I've started on this series called the Sacred Journey of Aging. I think I'm about halfway done, maybe 40% done, because I've got so many new ideas of other images that explore the dynamics of aging, which I'll show you some. But you can see in there that I don't have a problem dealing with duality. There's always kind of a bright side and there's always kind of a darker side. And when you can hold both of them in your hand at the same time, I think you feel the richness of it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do as I'm dealing with aging is, you know, there's some losses to that for me. But then there's also been some rewards to that. And so what are the dynamics of that? Especially, again, from the perspective of a woman. How many picked the eye to look at? What did you see in there?
I believe that this was the first work I saw of this new phase of yours when we were at your house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so struck by the switch from your previous work to this.
Yeah.
And I was just stunned by this. And the fact that it could be so amazingly crafted to show what it is, it was just amazing to me. It was just such a transition. So I mean I think it was probably more about you making a transition, but it's such beautiful work.
Oh, thank you.
So, I like the other stuff too, but it's
Thank you. See, I made sure my friends showed up today. This was the next one I did, and you can kind of see that it's kind of the same style in the sense that it's a little abstract, but yet it's kind of figuratively. And this one struck me, again, holding duality in both your hands at the same time and saying, yeah, both things are true. You may not logically think that, but they are. Did anybody pick this one?
Yeah. I was drawn to this. I mean, when I looked at your website, this was the first one that caught my attention. I think on everything that I sent out, I use this image. Initially, I think it was because the face looked like my people. Like it looked like my great aunt. And so, as I looked at it more, I just saw other, people of color in this image. So yeah, just very familiar. And the blue just really drew me in.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting that you say that because I put this on Facebook. I grew up in Phoenix, and I put this one on my Facebook page, and one of the guys that I went to school with, who still lives out there, wrote back and he says, "Is this a Navajo woman?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so." And I think the original picture, she is from Malaysia. But when I was thinking about his comment, I was thinking, isn't it nice that that face is so universal? Okay, let's go on to the next one. This was another one where I started with a photograph, and I just liked that face and almost defiant, and I ended up calling it attitude. And for me, the older I get, the less I care about what other people think of me. And it's more important for me to be true to myself and to be who I am. And it just seemed like this woman was saying, yeah, I'm going to be who I am.
That's interesting because I actually detected some sadness in your eyes.
Oh, really?
And so I'm projecting here.
Well, no, that's good.
Because my mother, so what I took away from this was more of my mother's attitude. Like, I'm going to put on the best face I can to fight against the dying of life, you know, right? Against aging. But I know deep down inside that it's not like it. That's what I got.
Okay.
But that's from a very personal experience. Because you asked,
Yeah.
how does this relate?
Yes, absolutely.
He's a spouse, so I know her, and then when I saw that, like, okay, that's my mother. I know. Tried so hard to be a good dotator, but I don't know. It didn't work out. So, yeah. I agree with you.
Have others of you felt defiant against the process of aging? Huh?
Trying to be defiant.
Angry?
No, just defiant.
Okay. I have to say I've felt quite a bit of anger in the process. Like, why? I don't want to do this.
So Susan, it's interesting that you titled it Attitude because what I saw was my mother-in-law. She was elegant. She was a librarian. She spoke French. She loved purple. I mean, she just was a very proud woman. But I think she did care about what other people thought about her.
Ah,
So I didn't.
you didn't put those two together.
No, I did not put those two together. And I was first drawn to the blue one. And I thought that would be the one I'm most drawn to. But as soon as I saw this one, it just clicked and reminded me so much of her.
And so what kind of feelings do you have when you think of her?
Oh, just warm, grateful feelings. I mean, I never knew my mother-in-law when she was younger, only later.
Mm-hmm.
And just a very proud, very distinguished woman.
Kind of a role model about
Yeah.
how you should age?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
This one, this one came up as I was contemplating the fact that the older I get, the more I think I'm like my mother. And if there's anyone that she's passed, and anyone that I hear is her, I can still hear her comment about things in my mind. And then other people in my life as well. And I thought, you know, people have gone before, the people have gone before us, and they've made impacts on us. So we either know what they would have thought, or they are still communicating with us in a way. And so that's why they're the kind of the colors that they are in the terms of, you know, past. I thought of the dark. And then as I was finishing it up, I thought, how do we communicate with these people without words and without speaking? What would be a symbol of that? And so that's where the Braille came in, is just a way of communicating without speaking and hearing. And for most of us, these people are blessings to us in our lives. This one, did anybody was drawn to this one?
I like that it was distinct among the works that you're showing today, in that it is a grayscale as opposed to more of a black and white. And looking at it, what struck me, I think is that actually the eyes are still very young. It's just set in a face that we describe. And so I don't know any relatives who actually would ever pose that way, but the look on the face is something that resonates.
Okay.
I also like the little fading off into the dissolving
Yeah.
that part too. But that was more technical.
I actually like the other one in the blue with the hands the best for me, but this one struck me as being androgynous.
Ah.
I couldn't tell, and even though you said they were photos of women, it could have been masculine or feminine, or I couldn't tell, and it was just this beautiful face.
I agree with you. I saw that same thing. Is
Yeah.
Which one is it?
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, aging is universal.
totally.
Men and women get to go
Totally.
through it, maybe a little differently, or
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still a passage. And when I picked the original photo before I reworked it, I was really taken with her hand and the pondering, because you know, aging is another passage that, you know, we all go through, along with adolescence and midlife and whatever other passages that you've gone through. And they're not exactly easy, but the more that you kind of are in it and ponder it and connect with it, I think it helps you come to a point where you celebrate the good things of it. And so I just saw her pondering what it's like, and thinking about those pros, and especially the pros of age.
This hadn't been specifically woman subjects focused, my first impression was that it was a man, actually.
Okay.
And I really liked it, related to it, drawn to it because of all the pondering I do. As I go through this life journey, I think about what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of stuff kind of falls to the wayside the more you're around.
And the other thing that was cool about it is as you get closer to it, you see there's more color in it than when you're back and several of the pieces. You didn't see the little
Yeah.
additions of color in there until I got up closer. And then looked at the back, especially the one with the hands.
Yeah.
When we pulled that up and saw all the gold.
Thanks.
Nice work.
And I go back to something we talked about earlier. You can see how I've hopefully created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or more colors by mixing probably 2 or 3. By the techniques that I used weaving, or the winding different colors on the same bobbin. Okay, like I said, I'm maybe not halfway through my series. So now you have to bear with and see some of my sketches. This one I call Feeling Invisible. And this one came from one story in particular, but many of my friends have said things to the same effect. One woman was she's about my age, and she was describing an experience in a department store where she was trying to buy something. And the person, I think it was a gentleman, who was ringing people up and helping service the people who were purchasing things, basically ignored her. And he focused in on the younger folks, the prettier folks, the folks that drew his attention. And her takeaway was just, I feel invisible. It's like nobody sees me like they used to or would have in the past. And so that's where that one came from. And if you want, you can see it. Here's the full size. This kind of gets into how I do it. But I create the image full size like this. And then I translate it into something that I can weave. So, and then another one that I'm working on is this one. And the phrase came to me as I was thinking about things, is that there's lessons in loss. Especially as we get older, we lose things that we don't get back. It could be the ability to do something. It could be a friend that's gone, or your parents. There are a lot. The losses kind of mount up, and there's some grieving to that process. But then there's also lessons in that. And can anybody think of an example of that where you took a lesson away from losing something?
Besides injury, I felt a little bit like Jacob a few times getting my, with physical activity. You're doing something that you always used to do, and then, you can't move the same way that you used to.
So have you started doing something different?
I certainly did, yeah.
Then talk about that.
So, as a young person, I was very athletic, and as an older person, I thought I needed a sport. So I took up Taekwondo, and so that's been kind of my second. It was my second life for a while.
And you wouldn't have done that if you hadn't been limited in another way.
Nope, if I wasn't trying to save my hamstrings, I would not have done Taekwondo.
You need to talk to Amy over here afterwards.
I'm a fourth degree Bible.
I
take one now.
First day, so
And I couldn't go to class today because my knee is bothering me. So you're here. So yes, so I'm here.
And there is, the other thing is, I probably am pronouncing it wrong, kintsugi. I don't know whether anybody knows that, but it is a Japanese pottery technique where they make a bowl or a vessel of some kind. It looks like it's done, then they break it, and then they glue it back together with gold. And so this is a sketch. This is pretty straightforward, but there'll be slits in this, and some of the slits will be sewed up with gold. And some won't. I mean, some losses are just losses. And then this one is the last slide I have for you, and this is what I'm translating into a piece right now. And basically, I'm saying, screw it, just have fun, just make mischief. And either make mischief, or if you're Scandinavian, Loki is the Norwegian god of mischief. So that's where that came from. And so this one won't quite look like that when I'm done with it, but you get the idea. And you can see kind of where I start, or kind of the first phase of my process, which is to come up with the image and then turn it into a tapestry.
So what kind of image were you looking for when you wanted to come here and find something?
I wanted older women. I should have brought that. There's one image of this woman that I got out of the archives, and she has this stately look on her face, and it said she was a pioneer woman, and she just looks straight at you. And what I've started doing with that image was just kind of cropping the eyes, kind of along the lines of that or that, and then I'm going to play with some surface techniques to enhance that. And then there's some others. There weren't a lot of pictures, and they're pretty posed. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with the rest of them. I got about 10 of them when I was here, but you know, from an artist standpoint, wrinkles are fun.
I imagine the pioneer woman one was from some time ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know, being an artist, that posing was required.
Yeah.
Right? Because you had to have long exposure.
Yeah.
For everything to work, and you had to stand still and stare at the camera. Right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how you have this period of time and all these pictures look remarkably similar.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing too is, and this is something that I kind of have to figure out how to manage, is most people want to look younger, and they want to not have pictures with wrinkles. So what do? You flood it with light. And so professionals flood your face with light so it doesn't look so old. And I want it to look old. So I have to figure out what to do with those kind of pictures. And that's where the interpretation comes in. I mean, there's heavy interpretation in this one. In fact, I think I took 3 photos and combined them together to come up with the image that I wanted. So.
Something else I saw.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And something else I saw in trying to find those images was if there were older women in the image, there was like something. First of all, the camera was very far away, or there was something much larger in the frame. Like the woman was not the subject in any of the So yeah, I'm thinking about this comment that you made about the invisible comment, and how this clerk is is not seeing your friend, and it seems like value is an issue, right? So if you don't have any more, you have less value as an older person than a younger person. So in terms of financial, the economic value and relationship value and all of that. So
Big time.
yeah, that sucks.
I think there's a positive though from being, you can just kind of go about and you don't have to worry about people, looking at you, judging your clothes or anything. It's like that. So I find some
Freedom.
joy in that actually.
I feel a lot of power in invisibility. I feel like it's a superpower.
Great. You just gave me another image. Superwoman with a cape.
Invisible cape. A lot of privilege, actually. I feel more privileged the older I get.
That's wonderful.
There's an episode of Grace and Frankie where Grace and Frankie's a show on Netflix with
The
Jane Fonda
best.
and Wayne Thomas.
Yeah.
But I think it was in the first season, they go to buy alcohol at a liquor store, and the clerk just won't serve them at all, and they just walk out with the alcohol because they're completely
I wanted to ask about that technique you had said, because usually your things are flat here, but you said there's also almost like a 3D point. And what inspires you to add that part, or how does that come into your work?
Well, there's kind of two parts to my answer. Number one, I'm just a real tactile person. So that's obviously why I got attracted to weaving versus painting, or
Totally.
yeah, because I mean, it's, and so, and then I took a class last summer from an artist and fiber artist, and I took a lot out of her class, but the first thing she said was, don't just start weaving, think about how what your emotion is, or what you're trying to say with your image and your piece. And and then how do you express that in what you produce? And she had stuff that it looked like knots, and you know, she used plastic and she used sisal, and you know, her images were about the sea, and so she had these just almost sculptural pieces that were, you know, very representative of the movement of the sea. And her imagery and mine are different, but the same thing, you know, is how do you use your medium to communicate an image? And so on this one, for instance, I'm going to have stuff that comes off the surface, just because I think it's more playful, but I've decided I'm going to put little ribbons in her hair. So little ribbons, you know, because part of being mischievous is being childlike. So she'll have ribbons in her hair. And then actually, just last night, and you can tell what I do at night, I said, the older I get, the more I think I'm like my mother. Well, I thought, how would I weave two pieces that, in essence, get woven together? So I'm going to start playing with how do you take her image and my image, cut it into strips, weave it together, and then how would I weave that, which would be very sculptural, in the sense that, yeah, we're two peas in a pod. And we're woven together, whether she's here or not.
So I keep thinking of this pioneer woman
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
have the picture looking straight at you. And immediately I was seeing not your colorful first series or these, but it was all sepia. Sepia tones, however you say that.
Yeah.
And have you ever done that, or would it be too washed out? Or there's enough shades of that.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to see that. That would be so pioneerish and so sort of calming, even though those women had such a, I think, hard existence in many ways. It was also, sometimes when I think of what that world was like, it had to be quiet. And those tones would be quiet to me, or calm. You know what I mean? Think how much noise there wasn't.
Yeah.
Except natural
Yeah.
cricketing. Yeah.
I can even see some kind of sage color, like your sweater,
Yeah.
the browns and the sage.
Yeah, prairie. Or the Southwest.
Yeah.
It's amazing what color can do, and you have just a few colors, and it's just all dimensional, and you know, the depth in it, it just blows me so away.
Well, that's all I have, unless you want.
That's a lot.
Now, when you mentioned merging the image of you and your mother,
Yeah.
are you talking about like bringing them into one piece?
Yeah.
Or just, okay.
Yeah.
It made me think of a time, years ago, I was in a little village in Oaxaca where they did a lot, they were known for their weaving down there. And a lot of serape, a big blanket. And they just wonderful designs on it, nothing like this, detail. But because of the size of the loom, which was, maybe 6 feet across or whatever, and the blanket was big, which they basically doubled it and then somehow connected it and then weaved it together. And then still have it. I paid $20 for it. And I went into a store on Grand Avenue about 10 years later, this is decades ago, and pretty similar design was $250.
Pendleton stuff is even more.
Yeah, like Navajo blankets, they're incredible pieces of art, and very time consuming. Very.
Have you sold any of your tapestries?
I sold one to Luther Seminary, and they had a collection on the prodigal son, and I did a piece on the prodigal son.
For them?
Yeah.
I mean, like with that idea?
It was a commission.
Okay, because otherwise, I think it would be so hard to let go of these images that you lived with for that long. But if they asked for it and you created for them, that would be different.
Yeah. My struggle is in selling them is not so much letting them go. After a period of time, I feel like they should go out to the world. But I refuse to work for something less than minimum wage. And they're so labor intensive that most people aren't looking for art in that price range. So I don't sell much. And so I basically, my goal is to exhibit,
So you do quite a bit of that?
Yeah, I do. Pretty much always, not always, but I've always got several numerous shows every year. So as long as they get out to the world that way, I feel good, and thankfully I don't have to make a living doing this because I couldn't. Did you have some comments?
I was just going to, but thank you, Susan.
Oh. Thank you. I love it when you participate. That just means the world to me.
Yeah. I'm John Crippen, director of the museum here. So again, the word that kept coming into my mind through this program was serendipity. We didn't really plan 2023 to be the year of art in history, but that's what it's turning out to be. And Susan kind of presenting herself to us unexpectedly a couple months ago just adds to that. So for those of you who haven't been here before, I encourage you to explore the rest of the museum while you're here. We've got hidden gems right behind you, which is art from our collection. But we also have another very personal exploration of history through art upstairs in an exhibit called Family in Pieces, where a woman found herself with all of her family's historical things, and what do I do with them? And so she started to create art out of them, and she tells that story upstairs. So I encourage you, if you haven't been here before, to explore and look around. And I also just wanted to thank those of you here who are already members, already supporters of the museum, either as a member or through our Pay As You Can, because it makes programs like this possible and really helps us with our mission. So, Sue, member, yes?
I just have a quick question, because there was an article in the Star Tribune a couple weeks ago about a woman who's found
Yes.
painting on her wall, and it turns out you guys have another by that artist.
Right.
Is that part of this exhibit yet?
The story that was in the strip
Okay.
is not in the exhibit, but we should probably figure out a way to connect that on our website or something. But one of the 4 featured artists, we've got a number of artists from the 20th century in there. One of the 4 featured is Francis Greenman, who was the artist in that story. And I don't know if Tom's still here. Is Tom still here? Yeah. The local expert on Francis Greenman has been here almost every week doing research, and he was quoted in that article. Anyway, she's a fascinating, and we've got a portrait of her that I think you might be interested in.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Anyway, one other plug. As you think, to the extent that this might have inspired you to think about your family, your personal history, talk to Michelle afterwards about our memory lab, because Michelle has set up a station down in our library where you can digitize all sorts of family artifacts, from photos to film to whatever. And it's another way to kind of get into your story a little bit and get your mind going about what you can do with it. So anyway, thanks for coming again.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Oh, thank you. You guys have been a